So, hi, everybody. Long time no see. I haven't even seen Kate or Brianna in over a year. I wish that we were all in person again. Hopefully, in the next few months, we'll get there. I am presenting from my lovely home in Slingerlands. Welcome to my kitchen. How are you all? Let me just warn you, I have 3 cats at home right now, and one of them is a kitten who's on the other side of the table. So if I have to do one of these, throw one over my shoulder every once in a while, I apologize. It will be way more exciting probably than the ones we have back at 540 Broadway. The other thing is that I'm working with a little bit of functionality issues. My Mac is what I'm actually doing the WebEx on, but I can't get into my PowerPoint notes in the WebEx on the Mac. I have my work computer next to me where I can get to the notes. So I will be kind of looking over here every once in a while. Hopefully you're not distracted by that. The work computer, unfortunately, does not have the video or any of the things to be able to do that. So we'll figure it out. But welcome. I'm so glad to at least have this connection with you in our little WebEx room. All right, so we'll jump into third-party gifts. Oh, one more technical thing I think before, if Kate didn't mention it, WebEx is a funny little bird. If you have any issues or just log back in. We can't do much regarding those issues. So just, try to log back in if you get kicked off or anything. All right. So without further ado, this is a quick topic overview. The main thing we're looking at today is Advisory Opinion 2002. 2020 was a big year. We had 2 advisory opinions, which when the commissions in its various forms has been around for 35 years, you cover pretty much everything. So to have 2 advisory opinions last year was pretty good. And we'll start with a review of the gift rules. I'm not sure if any of you are brand new ethics officers or not, but it's always good to go through all the main stuff, and we will do that. When we're looking at third-party gifts today, we'll be examining the solicitation. We'll be examining who is asking for or soliciting that third-party gift. And when I mean factors considered, we'll examine when there is a third-party gift, and then we'll look at from an interested source, and most of you know what that is, but is it ever okay? Are there going to be any circumstances when we look at when the gift is being solicited or asked for, is it ever okay for the state employee or the official to accept it? And part of that examination, we'll look to see if there's a connection between the public official and the third party. We'll talk about just a few enforcement actions at the end. And then, of course, we'll open it up to questions. Unfortunately, I didn't get any from you guys this time. We did do a couple hypotheticals that we'll run through it, just in case we don't get any questions. All right. All right. So this is just a basic overview of what this opinion is about. And we'll start with some of the broad rules too. A gift solicited by a public official from an interested source is presumptively prohibited. This is something we all know. We teach this in the CETC, in the seminar. Most of you know that the concept of an interested source is found in the gift regs, and it's a codification of the analysis that's laid out in statute in the Public Officers Law 73.5. That's where it all stems from. So what an interested source is ultimately comes from that. The opinion is going to provide guidance for identifying the gift, the subject here, and then whether this presumption of something coming from an interested source can ever be overcome by examining the circumstances surrounding that gift. And we'll take a deep dive into that. When we think about third-party gifts, there's going to be additional scrutiny that we'll look at here. Direct gifts from interested sources, so are the most obvious case when we talk about gift-giving scenarios anyway. But gifts directed to third parties can be just as problematic as direct gifts to that actual employee or that public official. And it's going to require a closer look at the circumstances surrounding that gift. And we'll go into those specific factors that the advisory opinion laid out and considering whether that gift is prohibited by law. All right, so let's get into that review of the gift rules. Thank you for being patient with me going back and forth here. All right. Okay, so what is a gift? Gift is anything that is over our $15. In the advisory opinion, excuse me, here's one of the cats. In our gift regs, we talk about items of nominal value. So those are generally okay to take as long as it doesn't create the appearance of a conflict of interest. Something Kate and I say in our trainings over and over again, you always have to think about Public Officers Law 74. So even when there are items of nominal value, you have to look at the circumstances surrounding the gift to see if that item was being given to you to reward your official action or to influence official action. And another review of interest sources could be lots of different entities or persons that are involved with your agency. So it could be a person or an entity that is regulated by or appears before you or your agency, contracts with or seeks contracts with you or your agency, registered lobbyist or client, or the spouse of or the minor child of either a registered lobbyist or client that lobbies your agency, is involved in ongoing litigation that is adverse to your agency, has received funds from your agency generally within the last year, or attempts to influence you or your agency in an official action. So basically, it's an entity or person that has a vested interest in the business of your agency. So we start out, we'll go through each parts of the A, B, and C of 73.5 of the Public Officers Law. This is a statute where it all starts. So as an employee, state employee, there's no soliciting or accepting a gift where the gift was intended or could be expected to influence you or was intended as a reward for your official action. Section B, this prohibits gifts from a lobbyist or a client, but it does say unless it's not reasonable to infer that the gift was intended to influence or reward. So it does give a way to sometimes allow that to be permissible. But as you saw before, a lobbyist or a client is one of those interested sources. So this always, you need to look a little bit deeper when we're thinking about a lobbyist or a client. All right, part C. This is where it prohibits a public official from permitting or directing the solicitation or acceptance of any gift from a registered lobbyist or a client to a third party. So this is when we're talking, this is where we're getting to the meat of our opinion here. There are also corresponding regulation provisions that we'll get into in a second. Okay. We always have to think about Public Officers Law, Section 74. Code of Ethics contains all sorts of standards of conduct. I think there are 9, but these are particularly the ones that are relevant when we're considering when soliciting or accepting gifts are permissible or not. And this includes Part D was no use of state job to obtain an unwarranted benefit for yourself or another. Avoiding situations that may suggest improper influence, and that's Part F. And then H is behaving in a manner that does not suggest misconduct. Those two, the F and H, are the ones that we call the optics test. Let's look at some of the sort of mirrored with Lobbying Act provisions. Section 1M of the Lobbying Act prohibits lobbyists and clients from offering, or giving a gift to a public official unless circumstances do not permit a reasonable inference that the gift was intended to influence them or reward them. We talked about the kind of the opposite part, the opposite in the statute. It also restricts lobbyists and clients from offering or giving a gift to the spouse or the unemancipated child of a public official, where it's reasonable to infer that the gift was intended to influence that official or that public employee. All right. We do have the corresponding gift regulations. This is the one that's applicable to state employees. A gift from an interested source is prima facie impermissible unless there is no reasonable exception or expectation of influence on the public official or reasonable inference of intent to reward them. Then we also have Part 934, which is the gift regulation that's applicable to lobbyists and clients. The regulation here presumptively prohibits a lobbyist or a client from giving any gift to a public official unless it is not reasonable to infer that the gift was intended to influence the public official, and two, the gift could not reasonably be expected to influence the public official in the performance of their state official duties, and it's not reasonable to infer that the gift was intended as a reward to reward them for official action. All right, so those are all the basics, all of the different statutes and regulations that we're dealing with when we're in a gift giving scenario. So let's get into examining the solicitation. And particularly here, again, we're talking about when a public employee, public official is soliciting a gift and it's for a third party. The most obvious cases I think I discussed before is a direct or a personal solicitation from a public official or a state employee. To determine whether the solicitation of a gift to a third party is permissible, we need to examine the circumstances surrounding the solicitation. So we have to look beyond those direct cases. There might be cases where we have to identify a gift that is made at that employee or that public official's direction or designation or upon the recommendation. We have to look at the circumstances surrounding the solicitation and who it's from to see if that gift is permissible. It's easy to identify when it's coming directly, when the question of the gift is coming directly from that public employee or that official. Sometimes there might be an intermediary. Oh boy, that's going to be fun to say a few times. So this is a person who is designated or authorized or is knowingly permitted to act on that official's behalf, or they self-identify as they're connected somehow or they're acting for that state employee, that public official. So for example, a public employee may make a general request for support while making it known that their intermediary is going to follow up with a specific request. That's a scenario that you may come across. Third-party solicitation may occur where the public official then acknowledges the gift or there might be, and also the evidence shows that the offeror is understanding that the solicitation was made on the public employee's behalf, or that they would be aware of the gift. When we have circumstances where there might be an intermediary, a state official cannot be shielded from liability by knowingly using them to solicit what might otherwise be an impermissible gift. So there may be, if the facts demonstrate that this middle person is acting for a public official, the employee, the public official, cannot rely on willful blindness to such a relationship when this gift giving happens. So when the third-party gift comes from an interested source, that general rule again, we know that this is presumptively prohibited. There are some times, though, we need to look at all these circumstances that could occur where it could be overcome. So we look at the totality of the circumstances surrounding the gift. And the advisory opinion, I hope you all were able to look at it before. It goes into great detail about all these various factors that we can look at. And we're going to cover quickly here. First factor is the nature of the solicitation. If it's a mass solicitation or a robocall versus, is it a personal request from the official or their middle person, the intermediary? Because you can imagine sometimes, oh gosh, probably at holiday times, there maybe robocalls go out for give to your local food bank versus you need to donate to this third party on my behalf. Okay. Second factor is the substance of the communication. Any communication that looks like a quid pro quo is a red flag implicating the gift restrictions. But it doesn't necessarily have to be it doesn't have to reach the level of an obvious one. So all of these, as you can imagine, are very fact specific as to words that are said. And also the substance of the communication may identify a third-party organization or discuss supporting a cause promoted by that public official. So what are they asking for in the communication? Again, this is a continuation of that previous slide. The substance of the communication, any suggestion that a gift could give access to the official or their staff, even their staff, will raise a concern. And then following that, evidence that the gift offeror gained access, that actually happened, especially if it was arranged by that middle person, would be weighed in determining that intent to influence them to take certain official action. Another factor that the opinion goes into is the nature and the purpose of the gift. So we consider the value of the gift and the significance of the gift to the offeror and the public official. So here we would look at, does the gift serve a charitable purpose, or does it go to a third party that is supporting the official's policy or political goals? So an example, an official solicitation in support of a toy drive during the holidays would probably be a permissible gift, but an official's personal solicitation of an interested source for money to support their political or their policy agenda is likely going to be prohibited. Next factor, the nature and the purpose of the third party recipient. So here we have to look into the extent into which the interests of the public official coincides with the third party recipient. The kinds of things that we would look into here. Is the official, that public employee or relative of theirs, are they involved in managing the organization? Are they publicly associated with the organization in any way? The next factor. Oh, yes.
Just because I had a question here that I think is relevant, and you may or may not address it later. Julia asked, what about when a philanthropic cause is in alignment with the policy agenda of an official? I mean, that's where we start getting into that gray area, but is there any particular factors that you would need to be aware of for that?
I think what else like this is it's hard to, without more information, to give specific guidance or advice regarding something like that. The point of this is going through all these factors, and I will go into a couple hypotheticals at the end where our point is that it's good to ask for guidance from us regarding these things, and that it's all going to come down to the facts of what's actually happening in that particular situation. We do have a few more factors. Maybe the hypos at the end will kind of give you a better idea of the things, how we'll apply this. But always come and talk to us directly about that. I hope that satisfies you for now. All right. So the public official's knowledge. Does the official know the identity of who responded to a solicitation? And if there's a blind process, it might be okay. So if the solicitation is for a specific event, such as a dinner, where the individual's presence would convey to that employee, the public employee or the official, that the support was given in response to their solicitation, it's likely not, the gift will not be okay. You know, here you are meeting with these people who gave to your cause. So that if the public official knows, that would go to the gift not being okay. All right, another factor is the nature of the pending business. Getting into really, why are they an interested source? Well, let's see what's going on with the pending business with the agency. Does the offeror have pending business before the official? What is the status of that business and the significance of that business to the offeror? So a couple examples here. It's relevant, for example, to consider whether the business is just a routine, for example, a license application versus lobbying for new legislation before that person. If it's legislation, it's relevant to consider the status, whether it is of specific application to the offeror or of general interest, and whether the offeror has actively lobbied on that matter before the official. Or should the public official reasonably be aware of the offeror's interest? Even a pending or even a pending matter of general application could possibly make a gift impermissible. So if the matter could specifically benefit the solicited party's interests or the solicited party's interest in the matter is otherwise known to be a public official. And also, for example, so it could be a lobbyist who lobbies on environmental issues, lobbies a public official. They could give a gift to a third party that has nothing to do with environmental issues. It doesn't have to be regarding a topic or an interest of that they're lobbying the public official on. This point is, it could be on a different topic that it doesn't necessarily have to be connected to what they're doing as a lobbyist. Another factor is hopefully I'm on the right one, there we go. Considering the timing of the solicitation, the connection between the solicitation and the pending business. So the timing and the status of the pending business and the official's role with respect to that business, which goes into the slide we just did. Did the offer occur close in time to a pending or a recent matter? Getting down to the end of these factors, so the offeror's history. We need to look at the history of the offeror making gifts to the same or similar organizations will also be relevant to this whole analysis. Was this donation made to support a cause that this gift giver has supported over time, or does this come out of nowhere? Was it independent of any solicitation connected to that public official? Was it in an amount that was similar to their prior donations? If the donation is out of the ordinary, then for that particular offeror, it might support a finding that the solicitation and the gift coming out of that is impermissible. All right, we've wrapped up the factors, so we'll just briefly go into a few of our enforcement actions. Beginning in 2015, JCOPE learned of lobbyists and clients who were lobbying New York City officials, including the mayor, and they donated to Campaign for One New York. It was a non-for-profit formed by the mayor in late 2013. I'm going to give you a little more of this background. So the mayor had 3 campaign officials, and one particular one that was named in one of these enforcement actions, his last name is Offinger. I hope I am pronouncing that right. He was Coney's treasurer and their chief fundraiser. And the purpose of Coney was to obtain support for his legislative and policy objectives. Okay. So here's an example of what might be considered somewhat of an indirect solicitation. We have a developer in New York City, Greenpoint Landing Developers, and they had an affiliate, Park Tower. Park Tower had retained lobbyists to lobby the city. So we have Greenpoint and Park Tower. Park Tower executive attended a meeting with the mayor and his chief fundraiser, Offinger, who spoke about fundraising for the mayor's priorities. So they were all there. And the affiliate, those folks from Park Tower, they dealt with Offinger and then later contributed to Coney. He provided the details, and there was a $50,000 donation. These are one of the enforcement actions we had when this all came out through there was this middleman here, right? Offinger. Greenpoint agreed to pay $20,000 to JCOPE to settle the commission's investigation of this particular enforcement action. Okay. Another one of these Coney-related actions, there were several, we're only going to go into 2 today. In 2018, the commission settled allegations of lobbying act violations with James Capolino, individually and then also on behalf of his business for $40,000. So what happened here was a direct solicitation right from the mayor. In this case, the mayor suggested directly that donations should be made to this not-for-profit, Coney. And afterwards, Capolino, he contributed $10,000 to Coney and secured another $90,000 in contributions from 9 different clients. Shortly after, he and his clients made contributions. Offinger and Capolino organized a breakfast right with the mayor and those clients who had contributed. So they were all at this breakfast together. And this helps us, it goes back to one of those factors that helps us think about whether a gift like this is impermissible. The public official here, the mayor, he had the knowledge of the contribution and the identity of the donors. They were all there at that breakfast after those donations were made. There's more facts to this, but that's the general gist of what happened there.
A quick question from the chat here. Somebody is interested in knowing whether or not does the mayor get in trouble for soliciting these gifts, or is it all, or are all the consequences just on the offerers?
As far as I know, right now, it's just been lobbying act violations. You could go into our enforcement actions, but I don't think there's been any enforcement actions against any public official yet. I am not in investigations, and we are walled off from that. So I actually really don't have any knowledge of that, but that's what we have so far. All right. So to wrap up this entire forum or this opinion, these are the main steps that we want you to think about. So we need to identify the gift and who is offering it. Those direct cases are usually pretty obvious, but we need to look into, the opinion goes into quite length about trying to figure out if an intermediary is involved here. Examine the circumstances surrounding the solicitation to see if that third-party gift was directed by a public official. And then determine whether the solicitation is from an interested source, and then is that ever permitted? And those are all of those factors that we went into. Are going to help us figure out whether that gift is okay to take or not. Okay, so do we have any questions? And if not, I will run, we created a few, what I think are pretty good hypotheticals that I'll run through, but I'll take a second to see if there's anything.
Yep, we do have a couple that I didn't break in with you about. The first question was actually related to when you were speaking a little bit earlier about the various conditions factors that you would have to weigh in determining whether or not this would be a problem to accept this gift. The first question is, could you clarify, when you said one of the factors is close in time, could you define or clarify how close in time would be considered?
Well, you know, an obvious example I think of that is there, it is close in time, if there's pending legislation, if a gift is given right in the middle of when that lobbyist, for example, is lobbying on that official on something that's right before them on their desk, or let's say the legislation maybe just passed and the gift is given, I don't know, a month after. I mean, those are the kinds of things I think you need to look at. Or was a gift given 2 years later? Or the facts could go so many different ways. But I think that's what we mean by that.
It sounds to me like.
I hope Mr. St. John, my boss, will correct me later if I'm wrong.
There is another question here. It's submitted by an ethics officer for one of our SUNYs. And the question is, I've had the example brought to me as we have done business with institutions from overseas, and they, as a culture, give a gift and expect a gift. So gifting across cultures is definitely a known challenge. So we would have a financial interest with respect to each other. Are they able to accept the gift as an individual and or from the institution? So how do you handle this particular kind of situation?
I was wondering if this was going to come up today, because we actually, this is something we're kind of thinking about. We had a similar question this week from a different agency. If you all have been doing this kind of work for a long time, as I have, gosh, like 10 years, not all at JCO, but I've been doing this for a long time. Gifts to an agency has been discussed in older opinions from the commission. And this, so when it's let's say it's a gift given to the agency, but solicited by a public official, you still need to now look at these factors and go through all that, because it's accepting, whether it's accepting or soliciting a gift to now what we could say a third party is our agency. So all those lines of opinions about gifts to an agency, we need to look through this lens now. I hope that's helpful.
So, so reading into it, I mean, this is where really having a group of people live in person where we could all kind of talk over one another would be ideal.
Come over to my kitchen, everybody. With masks.
You know, this sounds to me, though, like another one of those cases where sometimes ethics is just entirely situational and fact-specific, and, you know, to be alert to these kinds of situations so that they can be examined individually is probably the best way to proceed, maybe?
Yeah, and when you think about something like that, well, does the agency have any pending business with that foreign entity at the time? I mean, again, we would look through all those factors again. It's just looking at it in a slightly different lens.
Well, there's a related question. A person who is interested to know how this decision impacts gifts to the agency for a philanthropic purpose. So does the purpose of the gift, you know, for philanthropic reasons, does that have an impact on how these cases are decided and whether or not it's allowable?
I mean, I imagine it. Yeah, I imagine it would. I don't want to get into any specific yes or no, like that's going to be okay or not. What I think, you all know these as ethics officers, that it all turns on all the very specific facts of the scenario you give me. And that's shown true in all of the enforcement actions that have come before us too, all the things that we've discovered. Everything turns on what exactly happened in that specific situation. So I hate to be so vague. Are there any more questions? Why don't I do a couple of these hypotheticals? And you can come at me again after that, but let's run through these.
We're currently good with all questions that have been posed in chat. So if I missed a question, pose it again. But if you have any other questions while Megan is reviewing her hypotheticals, put them in the chat so we can address them before we go.
Okay. All right. So here we go with hypothetical one. A lobbyist has a meeting with a public official regarding legislation that the lobbyist would like passed. At the conclusion of the meeting, the public official tells the lobbyist how involved he is in the local Red Cross chapter. And then he asks the lobbyist if he's ever donated to the organization. The lobbyist replies that, yes, he thinks he has. A week later, the lobbyist reaches out to the public official to check on the status of what's going on with the legislation, and then to note that he made a contribution to the Red Cross. Is this permissible? Well, what do we need to know here? Was the lobbyist gift made at the designation or the recommendation of a state employee? So let's look at a couple of the factors. I think at the end of the day, we definitely would need more information, but from what's presented here, it looks like in a scenario like this might not be a gift that should be permissible to accept. There is pending business. So this lobbyist is right in the thick of things, trying to negotiate and advocate for his legislation before this public official. The nature of the solicitation, was it really a solicitation? Based on what we just have here, it's sort of unclear. However, the public official did say, hey, you know, I'm after this meeting, I'm really active in the Red Cross. Have you ever donated? He mentions not-for-profit. He doesn't outright suggest that he should donate, but it's coming at the conclusion of a meeting where they just got done talking about their pending business. Has a lobbyist, the firm, ever contributed to a related type organization before? So he says he has. But remember, one of the factors too, we would have to know a little bit more information. It has, maybe he does 50 years every year to the Red Cross, but what if this was all of a sudden a $5,000 contribution that was out of the ordinary? These are the kinds of questions you need to be asking or bring to us to help you figure out whether the situation is okay. So that was the hypothetical number one. All right. I'll do the other one too, and then if we want to put up some questions regarding these, we can too. Whoops. Okay. A lobbyist, having another lobbyist here, happens to be friends, personal friends, with a senior advisor to an agency head. So the advisor is a state employee. The lobbyist has had business before the agency in the past and will probably in the future have more business before this agency, but currently there's nothing pending before the agency. The advisor, when there has been business before her agency from her lobbyist friend, she recuses herself when that friend comes before the agency. One evening, the advisor, the state employee, and the lobbyist meet for drinks after work. The advisor mentions that she recently started volunteering at a very busy food bank in her neighborhood. The following week, the advisor learns that the lobbyist's firm made a generous monetary contribution to the food bank. And she wonders, now, did my comment have something to do with it? So let's think about these factors again. So here, there's no pending business, but there will likely be business in the future, but currently there's nothing going on. And I think another important factor to think about here is even when there is business, the state employee, the friend of this lobbyist, always recuses herself and has nothing to do with those matters when it comes before the agency. Nature of the solicitation. I think this is one that you would need to get more information on, because again, we don't know. It's a friend of hers, and she mentions, oh, you know, I've been really active and I've been donating and taking time to volunteer for the food bank. She doesn't come out and say anything about you should donate. And remember, again, there's no pending business. And has the lobbyist of the firm ever contributed to the food bank before? We don't know. So what's fun about these is we probably would need more information, but this second scenario seems, I think it would be more likely that donation to a third party, it doesn't seem like there is an impermissible gift here. Different facts may change our take on that. So those are the two I had. Does anyone have any thoughts about this before we wrap up here?
Yeah, there's a couple more follow-up questions about the scenarios that you just posed, so that's great. I
can't promise I'm going to answer your question, but
no, I'm sorry. This is the gotcha part of the game where you have no idea what questions get thrown your way, and good luck. All right, so ready? Here you go.
Here we go.
So reflect back to the Red Cross example that you just gave, your first hypothetical. And so the question from Julia asks, in that Red Cross example, when you say this gift is not allowable, what control does JCOPE really expect the government to have over that third-party gift? I mean, what would be the way that we should be handling that? Should we be calling the Red Cross and demand that they refuse this third-party gift? Or, I mean, it's one thing to say that this is a problematical situation, but what are the actual steps that need to be taken in this kind of scenario?
I don't think the agency should be doing that, but I think the point is to advise our state employees not to be to look at these factors and to make sure they're staying on the right line of when they're soliciting a gift. That's a hard question to answer, but I don't think it's within the agency to have to say anything to the Red Cross as the recipient. Our duties extend, I would say, right, only to the state employee.
Yeah, that is actually a really fine question. It really strikes to the heart of how ethics laws are really just very situational.
Now, third party is your wife or your child, then you might have a responsibility.
All right.
Wife or husband or partner or whatever. Yeah, didn't mean to exclude anyone.
There's another follow-up about when fundraising is when the solicitation is broad and there's a fundraising aspect that is more targeted. Your Red Cross example kind of touched on that. There was some overlap, but this person was wondering about when that project is some sort of state initiative. So a state initiative is announced, non-state officials fundraise for that initiative and then donate to that initiative. So what kind of impact do these factors have on that kind of scenario?
Just thinking off the top of my head, again, I think we do need to know a little bit more, but a mass solicitation, I think one of those factors was, let me back up a little bit.
Is this still a solicitation?
The nature of the solicitation, right? So is it a mass solicitation to folks at large? That's one of those factors that would go into the assessment.
Okay.
Well, I mean, the other thing I wanted to say at the end of this, again, it's hard when we're in this format where this particular WebEx format's a little hard to. We would love. I can't wait to be in person again or have smaller groups where we can actually see each other and talk back and forth with each other. I hope everyone got something out of this, even though I'm talking at you and I can't get more info from you. That's probably part of why this is a little hard at the end. But I think also you all know our legal email address, and if you have any specific scenarios you'd like us to think about, we can do that as well. I am hoping, God willing, right? I need to get out of my house. I think everyone needs to be back in the office at some point, and I can't wait to see you all again so we can actually talk. These forums are really designed for us to get into a room and work off of each other. We thought that this was a good one because it was a little more, this opinion is, we're just trying to get it out there and get you all thinking about it. Again, I hope that happens soon, that we can all be face to face and we can bounce ideas off of each other.
So I'll slide one last factor for your consideration, and this may not have a direct answer, but as in the spirit of giving us all plenty of things to consider, and the reason why we're doing this is because third-party gifts can be such a such a broad topic that has so many different factors to consider, I will offer one more factor for consideration. So this person says, all right, so what if there is a public statement on a policy issue issued by the government, and people who hear that public statement, who may be interested sources, donate to that philanthropic cause because there had been some public statement on that policy issue, and then the philanthropic cause sends a thank you note to the public official. Do you see how that may have connected?
I think that could, oh, go ahead. Yeah.
Well, is that a problem, right? Like if there is an official government statement and an interested source makes a donation based on what they heard, but then the source of that donation sends a thank you card to the public official who made that statement. Like, first of all, is that a problem? And if it is, what would you expect the government who is issuing that public statement to try to do to address that scenario?
Yeah. And my standard answer again is, I think, is we would need to know more, but it might go back to the nature of the solicitation. I think here it's a mass solicitation going out. He or she is not targeting any particular source for a donation, and they happen to respond. I don't know, without knowing more in that hypothetical, if it would be okay. The fact that it has gone out to the world, and it just so happens that interested sources do donate then to a third party, in and of itself, I don't think necessarily would make it impermissible, but our standard lawyer answer would say we need to know more information, I think.
And a comment from Mr. Keith St. John of JCOPE, our Director of Ethics, did have a follow-up comment to that. He said, gratuitous follow-up communication to the public official is the point where it may become problematic.
Right, yeah. Mm-hmm. By the way, I gave that lovely $10,000 contribution, and then a week later, hope you got the contribution. Yeah, I can see where that would be a problem for sure.
I do not see any further questions in the text chat area, although I am willing to concede that I may have overlooked something. So I do want to officially say that if somebody did ask a question in the text chat area that I missed, I do review them afterwards, and we always follow up with people for any questions that we didn't get to. So if you asked a question and I missed it, we'll try to get back to you. And of course, if you ever have questions, if this is the thing that keeps you up at night tonight thinking about all of these articles, you can always reach out to us at the legal inbox, legal@jcope.ny.gov, and speak to one of the attorneys about your questions.
All right. Well, again, it was lovely for all of you to join us today. And most of you also have, I can't believe I'm doing this, but you also have my direct, most of you know my direct email as well. If you want to email me directly with any of these follow-up questions. And I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your afternoon, and we'll see you again soon, hopefully in person.
Okay, thank you, everyone. We're always looking for feedback on this, and we're also always looking for topics for additional forums. We are hoping that we'll be able to conduct ethics officer forums in person sometime in the near future. We're all just crossing our fingers for a day where we can resume something that looks like what used to be normal. So in the meanwhile, take care, stay safe, reach out to us when you have questions, and we've got you. Thank you, everyone.
Bye, guys.